Human breasts are modified sweat glands that instead of producing sweat, produces milk, and it can produce 1.5 liters of milk a day, sometimes even more if you have twins. But then how do you get to convert food that you eat into milk? And again, how do you get to know the difference between Brian and a baby? Because in case of a baby, you might find that it opens the kitchen door. But for Brian, it might end up opening the bedroom door. Also, let me take you back. Do you remember that time when you used to hunt for water beetles and you would let them bite or even sting your nipples to make your breast larger? Maybe you can relate. If not, I'm sure your mom or your grandmother at some point, okay, not at some point, they know these things. They used to fetch water from the river and they used to do that. Most of them. Or all of them. So actually, is this something that can happen or used to happen? You're going to see what usually happens when it bites your nipple. And finally, breast sagging from anatomy point of view, what usually make them sag over time, or what are the things that usually make that, and some corrections that can be done. I'm sure you've noted this is going to be a very interesting video, and I'm making it because the next one should be on the pathological aspect of the breast. Those are the signs and symptoms that you usually ignore when they're still very subtle, but they come back to haunt us later. So this is that point when I tell you to subscribe and also make sure you ring the bell. And let's go to this video because it's very interesting. Now let's go to anatomy. Breast, where are they? On the chest, on a muscle called pectoralis major. That muscle is quite important. Make sure you keep that at the back of the mind when it comes to the corrections that can be made, the implants. That's the correction we're going to talk about. But now I'm assuming, what would happen if the breast were at the back there? How would you carry your bag? Anyway, they're placed on the chest for the efficiency of breastfeeding and nursing because you have the baby on your laps, you have the baby here, so you can easily monitor everything going on. And also you have the real estate at the back there to do other stuff like carrying things. We are coming from the Stone Age to where we are now. Now, the composition of the breast, you have the mammary glands, we have suspensory ligaments. This one is very important when it comes to the suspensory function of them. That's what will make the breast to sag over time. Something else that you need to know, that you have fat deposits inside the breasts, and this also will contribute to the size, and it can also contribute to the sagging of the breast later. Once you lose a lot of weight, you know, the body cannot be able to choose where you're burning fat from. So if you have fat anywhere in the body, it's going to be burnt. So one of such places will be in your breast, and that's why you find that when you are plump, when you had weight, you had breasts that were substantially large. But over time, when you lost weight, it also shrunk. Now let's go to the process, how the breasts get to develop, all the way up to when the baby is breastfeeding. How do the body get to know that this is a baby and this is Brian? Now let's go to that small tiny girl that was born. Let's call her Anne. Now Anne was born, she was tiny, didn't have the breasts, but she had a pack of her ovaries. So inside the ovaries, a full pack of eggs were there, full. But around puberty, that's when everything is changing. That's when the estrogen will come high, and this high estrogen will change almost everything. Now, there is activation of the eggs that were packed somewhere and put in a place. They were immature. Now, they start maturing because you have what? Estrogen. Now, this estrogen will also trigger deposition of fat and also development of the mammary glands. That's when she turns to puberty, breast starts becoming larger. She starts having wider hips. This is secondary sexual characteristics that are initiated by estrogen. Fast forward, she meets Brian. This might be either illegally or legally. I prefer when it's legally. So they're married. They want to get a baby. She now has well-developed reproductive system, so she can be able to handle a baby. Now, this is what will first happen in her body before she gets to ovulation. In her brain, in Anne's brain, we have a section called the hypothalamus that will produce a hormone called GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. This hormone will go to the central procurement department in the brain, that's the pituitary gland, and trigger production of a hormone which is very essential called follicle stimulating hormone. This is the hormone that will go to the ovary. In the ovary, it will trigger maturation of the eggs from a set of eggs. We're going to focus on that in a video about ovarian reserve, so make sure you're subscribed. So in that one, or maybe you can tell me if you actually need that video. So after maturation of that, a second hormone will be released. Now this is luteinizing hormone that will come and trigger ejection of this egg, which is mature, from a set of others that were not considered for this action. The mature one will be ejected and it will go to the fallopian tube and go for fertilization. The remnants, called corpus luteum, will produce a hormone that will be out there to look out for the egg in case there is fertilization, and this is progesterone. Remember, at this point also we are having a spike in estrogen, so we have two hormones which are very essential at this point. We have progesterone and estrogen. Progesterone being produced by the corpus luteum, which is where the egg was staying, so this is the wish. They want you to become pregnant, and that's why they're producing that hormone. So during that time, your breasts are not producing any milk because you have estrogen and you have progesterone. So you cannot produce any milk at this point. The breasts are there, fully developed, but they cannot produce milk at this point because there is a hormone which is being inhibited by these two which are high. Now this is where Brian will come in. You meet Brian during your ovulation, and the sperms comes and swims and meet the eggs. After fertilization, the embryo will burrow into the uterine lining, where a very special and very important structure that will affect your breast will be formed. This is the placenta. In addition to being the exchange point between the mother and the kid, and by the placenta usually comes from the baby, not from the mother, we have several hormones that are actually produced here. One is which usually tell us when you're pregnant or not, HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone. We have two others that we are going to focus on, estrogen and progesterone. They come from the placenta. So they continue being produced from the placenta up to the point, and I'm sure you know where we are headed to, when you're about to give birth. After giving birth, remember, also placenta is removed. So there is no production of estrogen and progesterone. So they go down. There is a hormone which is very important, which is actually being inhibited by these two hormones called prolactin. Prolactin is a lactation hormone. It's a very important one. We're going to see what will happen now. There is nothing inhibiting it at this moment. So what will happen is there's nothing opposing it. So it's ready to function. Now what will happen here, the interaction between the baby and the mother, we have three structures on the breast. We have the nipple, very important. We also have the areola. So this is what will happen. The baby will come and you'll put the nipple into their mouth. Now the mouth, the outside of the mouth is interacting with the dark area of the breast. Now the dark area has several things. One, we have the nerves. First of all, let's focus on the pimples so that we get to just run away from it. So those tiny pimples, they usually produce a certain kind of an oil which is antiseptic in nature, so it prevents infections from just accumulating there. So it kills bacteria, and this is the reason why just washing with clean water is enough. You don't need to use things that usually see being advertised out there. Water is enough. Your body will be able to take care of that area by disinfecting that area for the sake of the baby. So now when the baby is breastfeeding, remember the nipple is inside the mouth, and even the nose and the outer part of the mouth is interacting with the dark area of the breasts. We have nerves endings there that will be stimulated by the baby, and they're going to send the signal into the central nervous system that will now delegate that function into the hypothalamus that will now trigger pituitary gland again. This is the procurement department, to produce two very important hormones. The first one is the one that we said, prolactin. The second one is oxytocin. Prolactin will be sent to the breast. In the breast, we have the structure. Let's go to the structure of the breast so that you get to understand how the milk will be made. In the breast, we have fatty tissue surrounding lobes. Now, the lobes are quite important. We have sectional units called lobules. Inside the lobules, we have the functional units called alveoli, and they are lined with epithelial cells that usually secrete milk. And how do they do that? They go to the blood, whatever you've eaten. You have proteins and you have sugars. They now pick those from the blood, and now they churn that into the milk that will now be injected into the lumen of that alveoli. So now the milk will be formed inside that car pouch, which is there. Now the process of conversion of everything that is out there in the blood into whatever is in the milk is a very complicated and a very interesting one for you to read. I'll put a link in the description box for you to go and see how interesting that things usually happen. Where do you get the fat, the comparison between what you get in cow milk and human milk. Everything. It's actually very interesting. So I'll put that link in the description box. Now going further, now you already have milk which is inside the pouch that you have there. But remember, there is a duct, there is a pipe leading from here going all the way out to the nipple, or maybe they congregate. We have several from various lobes. So they come together into the nipple where now the baby is sucking. And by the way, when the baby is breastfeeding, the first 30 to 60 seconds, there is nothing coming out of it, because now this is when everything is happening. Everyone is rushing to bring the ingredients. So now prolactin, that's the function of that, to organize the kitchen, make sure delegate the function. You make protein, you bring in the sugar, you bring the other thing, so that now you churn everything to make the milk. Now you have the milk. You'll have to eject this milk out. That's where oxytocin will come in. Now, on top of alveoli, we have other cells that are there kind of hugging those things. So they're kind of surrounding them, and they contract and try to squeeze whatever is inside the alveoli out through the ducts that will now collect and go all the way. And now combining this with the effect of the baby sucking out whatever is inside the breast, now the milk will come out and the baby will breastfed. Now let's assume we have Brian here. How does the body get to know the difference between those two? Now, if you look at if you look at the interaction between the baby and the mother, that will tell you the difference. Now, the baby is here, it doesn't do much, just suckling, and there is a pattern to how it's doing that. So there's a pattern as to how the baby is breastfeeding or sucking. So there is that sucking, and also there is the stimulation of the areola, because we said we have nerves that are there. Then let's go to what will happen. Okay, plus other things, the physical touch, whatever is happening there might be the fight between the hands of the baby and you. The interaction is totally different. Now let's go to Brian. Brian, there is no pattern. The interaction is totally different because the hands might be in other areas apart from wherever the baby's hands might be. So the difference between whatever the signal is coming from the baby and that other signal which is coming from Brian, that's where now your brains, the brains of the mother, will interpret the signal differently. We have the first one for the baby. It will open, it will go to the pituitary gland, and this is where now the hormones that will come to open up the kitchen, which is where now the breast. We have oxytocin and prolactin that will come and function as we have described. That's what will happen during this time. But for Brian, because the hands are in other places, the signal is totally different from where the baby is coming from. There is no pattern. What will happen is the signal will be interpreted by the brains and then to the hypothalamus, and other glands will be triggered. And you know the glands that you're talking about here. So that's what will happen. It might happen, it might not. I encourage it to happen. And by the way, when you are on this topic, you can use breastfeeding as a form of family planning, because what will happen is, because you have a prolactin, which usually inhibits ovulation, is high in the system because you have a baby who is triggering production of the same from your central nervous system, that is from the pituitary gland. So you're not going to have that. But it's not 100% way. So be sure that you can get pregnant when you're still breastfeeding, but chances are low. So you can either use this as a method of contraceptive, or you can just talk to your guy. Make sure you're using the barrier method or whatever other method that you can use so that you don't get pregnant. But you can use this as a contraceptive method, which is not really recommended because of chances of you also becoming pregnant. You know, the body is made up of so many systems that are supposed to work in tandem. They're supposed to work always. But there is always that time when one of the systems is off guard and all of a sudden you're pregnant. Hey. Now with that information, let's get to tackle several more things. Like we have the first one, which what usually happen when you use the Beetle that we mentioned to make your breast larger. Now, I'm not sure whether you've noted. I've not tried. Okay, I tried. Did I? I'm not sure. It knows where the nipple is, because once you try to make it maybe sting your skin, it doesn't. But once you take it closer to the nipple, yeah, it will do that. It will do the thing. What will happen? Two things here. One, inflammation. There is a sting which is painful. The body will react by sending more blood there so that it will go and fight whatever is causing the discomfort there. That's the same reason why, for example, when you have an injury, you might swell in that area because blood is being forced to go to that area to try to assess the situation. Now it's sending more blood there to your mammary gland, to your breast, to assess the situation, and in the process, it swells. The second thing is, now you see the sting and the pain which is coming from that sting is because of injection. It's kind of like a bee sting. Now when that beetle stings you, it's a defense mechanism. It injects into your body this. It's a list of things that usually inject. And I'm sure you can see one of what is very important here that we have. We have progesterone and we have estrogen as part of what might be injected there. So it can contribute to the growth, which is negligible, by the way, because now after the inflammation is gone, you're back to you. Now the good thing about this thing is we don't know any side effects that have been reported from the effect of the same. Maybe you can try and see. I don't know. I'm not encouraging to do that. Now let's go to the sizes. First of all, before you get there, what usually make the breast sag? Like I said, we have strings. We're going to call them strings. They are ligaments. They are attached to the fascia. Now remember we said there is a muscle, pectoris major, so fascia is there. So we have strings coming from there, and they're just inside. Kind of the same thing that will happen when you have stretch marks. We have elastin and collagen inside your skin, and when you gain a lot of weight and then you shrink, they were stretched and they don't get back to their normal form once you lose weight. So the same thing will happen to the breast. They were stretched, either the strenuous activities, maybe the flight of stairs, maybe instead of going just a single stairs, you're skipping like 5 of them and you're going downstairs. So you're straining them, and when you do that, they lose their elasticity over time. The second thing will be weight. You had a lot of weight and then all of a sudden you lost it. Now, when you have a lot of weight, you know, your body will just deposit that fat anywhere. If you want to just deposit wherever. One of such places, because you have estrogen, is inside your breasts. And when that happens, is you're now pushing more material inside there. So you're kind of stretching on the strings and they're going to lose elasticity. So back to when you lose weight, they're going to be left almost where they were left when the breasts were large. So you're going to have them sagging. Now, the third cause is breastfeeding. Now, like I said, production of milk, you know, by now you understand. You can be a professor now, you can go and teach people out there. So production of that milk will lead to expansion of the alveoli, and because you have several, it's going to make the breast a little bit larger, and that's why when you have a lot of milk, that we call that milk letdown. When you have a letdown, the breast will become larger. That expansion and shrinking will exert pressure on whatever strings that we have suspending or they are supporting the breasts. So they're going to lose their elasticity over time. How do you mitigate this? Now, when you are young, when she's still young, when they get to develop their breasts, let them wear a bra, because by doing that, you are supporting the action of the strings, the ligaments, so they're not going to stretch over time. And again, when you are exercising, when you're jumping here and there, you want to go down 5 flights of stairs, wear a sports bra, because they're very comfortable. They're going to really hold them in place. They can be uncomfortable, I know. Okay, how do I know? But I guess they are quite uncomfortable, but they give you really good support. A correction for breastfeeding, I don't know what to do about that one, because even when you express, the same thing will happen. So unless maybe you completely stop breastfeeding, yeah, they're going to sag over time, of which I don't encourage. And by the way, let's normalize having sagging breasts. I usually see comments online, very mean ones, that fallen, so just quite sad to see that, because it's a natural process. It will happen. As you age, your skin will not remain the same. Things will happen. We have elastin, we have collagen. They are going to age over time. The same thing will happen to whatever you have supporting your breasts. You breastfeed, they're going to have the same. You don't breastfeed, the same thing will happen. They're going to sag over time. Very few people will survive that, so it's high time we normalize that one. But in case it's so extremely important for you, we have procedures that can be done. We have tucking of the skin. It's a procedure, it's a surgical procedure where excess of the skin is removed. We also have insertion of implants. It can be done in 2 ways. One can be inside the breast tissue. A doctor will put that implant inside the breast tissue, and this one can be quite, quite evident, because from the margin between the breast and the body, you can see a really good margin, so you can easily tell that this person did a boob job. So there was an implant. You can actually tell in most of them. But there is another one, that this is the reason why I told you that for pectoris major muscle, you take a note of that muscle, because also that muscle, something can be put under. Remember, we say the breast is just attached from that muscle. Now, how about, instead of now putting that implant inside the breast, how about we just bury it inside where the muscle is, just behind the muscle? That will give you a good feeding between the body and the breast, so you cannot easily tell unless you lift the breast and you can see a scar back there. But this one, it's quite painful when you're recovering, because now you're dealing with the muscles themselves, so they are quite painful, and also it can take a little bit longer for you to completely heal. But this one, it's very hard for you to even notice that such thing happened, because now there's a transition, a very good transition between, a very subtle, you cannot tell the difference between whatever is happening on the skin, on the body, or the muscle, and the breast. So you cannot tell the difference. Another one which is quite temporary, that one is using a tape. You put a tape, and then you put a tape on the upper section of the breast, and you try to pull it upwards, and then you stick it on the other section of your body, so that it's kind of anchoring the breast, because you have that nice dress, you don't want to disappoint in a party. Maybe you have a dinner dress, or maybe there is a certain function and you have a very cute dress you want to. So you go, you tip yourself, and then you go to the party or whatever occasion it was, and then in the evening you come back, everyone is tired, you remove the tape, everyone want to sleep, and you both sleep. Now let's go to when you have very tiny breast. Can be genetical, can be you lost a lot of weight, so you didn't have much deposition in there. And by the way, there's no difference between the big breast and the small ones, because they're going to give you the same amount of milk when you have the baby, because the structure which is responsible for bringing out the milk or turning out the milk, they are the same. The differences are there because of deposition of fat. So it's only fat. So when you have the small one, you might not be having a lot of fat being deposited, so you don't have a lot of it in there. And you can correct this surgically. Like I said, implants. You can put implants, or you can just sit down and say, this is my body, let me stay this way. If you're comfortable, you can just stay that way. You actually don't need surgery. Why do you need them anyway? And using a water beetle is not going to help you as much. You can use implants in case you are totally uncomfortable and you really need to do something about that. Maybe it's a role in a movie, I don't know. You can go have implants and all that, or maybe you can use padded bras and stuff. And for those with a huge breast, it can be genetical. And by the way, we're going to talk about this one in a separate video, more information on it. But before you get there, it's due to deposition of fat. Maybe you gained a lot of weight, maybe it's genetical in your family, you usually get those. And correction for this is removal of the fat that you have inside there. And by the way, before you forget, for the small boobs or the small breasts, you can also inject fat in there to make them larger instead of having implants. Now back to the big ones. So you remove that, and people are concerned to know if there will be anything will be affected at this moment. Negligible, of course, is a surgical procedure. The only thing which is removed is the fat. Okay, it can make your breast to look not that, let's say, symmetrical, because you remove the fat, there is collapse of the skin, so they can do skin tucking and also repositioning of the nipple to make it more symmetrical. So it's a very interesting one to watch being done. But yeah, it can be done, or you can just lose weight, and chances will be you also will be having a sagging breast because of what we've just described. All in all, they are the breast. I hope this was fun. If you agree with me, just give me a thumbs up, and also share to those high school kids who want to know actually what's happening to their bodies. You can just share this with them. And by the way, I'll make a video for them about the menstruation. Should be fun. And Brian, you can tell us other functions of the breast apart from what we've discussed in this video. Maybe there's something that we've missed about the breast. And by the way, if you're using your breast to do all the good things, this is breastfeeding a baby, and disregarding the fact that they're going to drop over time, thank you very much. It's a very noble cause. I cannot do that myself because my body cannot be able to do that. And that's the reason I usually appreciate you women and ladies, because of bringing up the generations and breastfeeding that baby who cannot be able to survive on themselves. For those others who cannot be able to do that, it's not your fault. Maybe it's your choice. Maybe you decided not to, or your body cannot be able to handle that. We also appreciate you the same way you are. And yeah. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I have an interesting one coming, which is what usually happen. What are the things that you can notice about your breast that can tell you there is something that you need to do about them? See you in the next video. Can talk and talk by